Okay, our next reader. His name is Joe Pisciotto, and he thought he was going to be a proper writer at one time, but somehow he stumbled into farming, which he's been doing for 9 years now. He runs a small, sustainable vegetable farm with his business partner Carolyn in Winfield called Three Plaid Farmers. And you can find out more about that at threeplaid.com. Joe, come on up here and read for us.
Hey y'all. So I originally wrote this piece for a Band of Farmers event, which is a CSA coalition in the Chicago area, and we had a little performance where everybody had, music. They would do reading, they do comedy, dance, whatever. And so I read this piece last year at the Hideout in Chicago, and kind of adapted it for this event. And then the Band of Farmers is also having another event this year. Coming up at the end of this month, so you should check it out. It's a good way to find out about farms all around the area. Locally focused vegetable farming is, for the most part, the dedicated work of a small percentage of the population. And most of that work takes place behind the scenes, which you can only see and understand if you're one of those types who likes to watch all the special features on the DVD like a crazy person. And I mean crazy in a good way. But mostly people aren't watching. I mean, sure, as a farm that pre-sells most of our vegetables, we have an audience of members, and they really care that we know what we're doing. And they expect we have certain skills that allow us to grow plants. We actually prefer our members to be informed and involved with the farm. But the secret truth behind it all is that the plants grow of their own accord, and the weather ultimately destroys them one way or another. We simply plant the seeds, perform some upkeep, and then steal the fruits. Plants want to live and reproduce, and the wilder the plant, the better a survivor it is. We like our plants wild. Sounds beautiful, right? Maybe a little zen. Maybe you're picturing an idyllic farm setting. A red barn, a cute hen house, animals grazing on lush pasture, an outhouse with a crescent moon and star on it, plants growing large and vibrant in the field, weather-worn farm tools leaning casually against the slats of a rustic-looking outbuilding. I know that feeling. I like it too. But let's get real for a second. The barn has broken windows and doors. Electricity sometimes works, and when it does, a random shock might greet you as you touch some metal in the building. The outhouse is actually a 5-gallon bucket filled with sawdust. The tools are laying willy-nilly in various places, maybe even buried under some weeds on the edge of the field, which you will undoubtedly run over and rediscover when plowing next year. The plants you planted in the field are surrounded by other plants you don't want, and some of them are about to commit suicide because they hate you personally for your failures as a farmer. The animals have gotten out of their paddock and are destroying something you don't want destroyed, or they're simply walking down the middle of the road like a bunch of assholes. And then there's the weather. Farmers like talking about the weather because it affects so much of our lives. If it rains too bad, for the most part, you're out there doing what needs doing. You could try to schedule things around the bad weather, but more often than not, you're just being a fool. And when it rains for several days straight, you start to curse. Because you need to get in the field, but you're conscientious enough about your soil that you don't want to ruin it by working in the wet soil. It's probably often best to curse our society for helping the planet warm up at a breakneck pace. Because really, these deluges of rain and extended periods of drought we've been experiencing lately, they've gone beyond normal to extreme, and it makes food production one crazy ride to be on. And it makes those of us involved with small local farming all the more aware of how precious and under threat our greatest resource, the land, is. Because as small farmers, our lives are pretty much chaos. It's only through sheer determination and getting our asses kicked for most of the year that we even begin to make sense of it all. Plants and animals grow, and we do our best to make sure they grow the best they can by subjecting ourselves to all kinds of calamities and working our way toward knee replacement surgery. In the end, all the punishment adds up to us doing something we feel is worthwhile in general. It has a positive impact on our community by bringing real food back to our neighborhoods and using traditional growing methods that work in concert with nature. And it's personally rewarding in many ways. It's an adventure, and that's really the best way to put it. And part of that adventure in this era that is so dominated by mechanization and economies of scale is extreme poverty for many small farmers especially when just starting out, which isn't really a personal complaint, but more of an observation on where modern society places its priorities. Do we want cheap food grown with minimal nutrients and denuded soil with chemicals and genetic alterations that are potentially hazardous to the health of the land, the water, and plant diversity? Or do we want properly cost-accounted food that is grown by people who, for the most part, take an active interest in all the lives that are touched by their farm, from the tiniest microbes in the soil to the largest fish in their local watershed? We all belong to a food shed, and knowing the relationship that our food has to everything else around us might be one of those defining concepts that sets us on a different path in this crazy century. But all these ideas are one thing, and people can debate concepts all day long and get nowhere. And I think it's better to talk about the life we lead on the farm to illustrate why I think I'm partially crazy for doing this thing I love, but also why I think it's necessary for us crazies to have our chance to grow food for our neighbors, just like it's been done for millennia. My business partner Carolyn and I have been involved with farming for several years now, and this is our 4th year as owners of 3 Plaid. Each year has its own challenges, from severe drought and high temperatures, to floodwaters inundating our fields, to farming on the heaviest clay soil known to man during the wettest year on record. Each season and each new piece of land has been a beast to battle. Now in our 4th year, we're staying put on the same land that we farmed last year, which is a huge relief. Finding a stable spot to grow on is one of the largest hurdles to starting your own farm and being successful at it, in part because land is so expensive, especially around these parts. It's hard to compete with developers and large commodity farmers who come to the table with fistfuls of cash at the ready. We feel like we finally have the opportunity to seriously get down to business by improving the soil, growing perennials, and fostering a plant community that increases the overall health of the farm. Part of our mission has always been to have a diverse farm, one that is not only diverse in the amount of crops planted, but also in how many varieties we plant of each crop. Each season, no matter how tough the weather has been, has proven to us that diversity can really save your butt as a farmer. The greater assortment of plants you grow, the more likely you are to have plants that survive whatever nature throws their way. Still, we always wonder what kind of new challenges lie ahead. And with most of the craziness that happens on the farm, cool-headedness usually pays off, though it isn't always as easy to come by. And when it comes to things going wrong on the farm, my partner Carolyn is usually the cool-headed one. And when I say cool-headed, I mean she has laughing fits when things go wrong, which really does the complete opposite of make me feel better about the catastrophe. But it is cool-headed. On the other hand, I have not been all that great when it comes to handling the unexpected random difficulties of farming, which, let's be honest, makes me a complete lunatic for making this my career. But I know how to admit these issues, and hopefully that's half the battle. But my inability to handle these difficulties is often quite the show for the neighbors and my fellow farmers. It's sort of a creative outlet for me, in that I've probably invented at least a half dozen swear words. And I'm not going to tell you them, because I still need to get them trademarked, so they're that good. Anyway, there's a lot to swear about on the small veggie farm, believe me. Mostly, the small farm life is a constant set of challenges, and it requires extreme creativity, mechanical aptitude, and a willingness to adapt on the fly. Machines that make your life easier, such as trucks and tractors, break all the time. So you have to figure out how to do those things you've been doing with these machines in other, often more back-breaking ways. Or you have to fix the machine, which is sometimes impossible, like when it becomes engulfed in flames, true story, or becomes completely useless due to some structural failure, which is more common than you might think. Either way, your time is precious and there are not enough hours in the day. And so it goes. We've been out chasing animals for hours on end, and we've had days on the veggie farm that start before sunup and end well after sundown. It comes with the territory. And besides the physical and emotional commitment, all forms of small-scale farming take immense problem-solving effort and a steady dedication to observation and planning. It taxes the brain as much as the body. But when all is said and done, we love it. Why otherwise would we do these things to ourselves? It's really an unconditional love. Farming has its challenges, no doubt, but at the literal end of the day, we sit there and look at the land and the work we accomplished and take account of the veggies we've raised that are feeding the people in our community, our family, our friends, and we can't help but feel satisfied. These tiny little seeds we planted, they turned into giant nutritional beasts, and no petrochemicals needed, no poisons necessary. And at that literal end of the day, we can go out to the field and grab whatever veggies we want. And if we're not too bushed, we can conjure those ingredients into a witch's stew of a meal as the stars begin to come out and the fading light casts blue and green hued shadows over the varied topography of the farm field. A hard work's day often ends with a crash into a pillow, knowing that our labor was self-directed and good. Thank you.